Hi, everybody. Welcome to North of MAGA. I'm your host, Pierre Shields. I'm here to give you a Canadian's perspective on the American political landscape. And today, special treat. Today, we're going to be looking at a video by Belle of the Ranch. If you don't know Belle, she's fantastic. She's just really well spoken, writes great stuff, very timely, if you will. So we're going to be coming back to her more and more. If Go check her out, Belle of the Ranch. Like, subscribe, share her stuff if you can. So we're going to do a quick reaction to a video called "Let's Talk About Canadian Tourism, Long-Term Effects, and Plattsburgh." I'll put it full screen and off we go.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Belle again.
Hi, Belle.
So, today we're going to talk about Canadian tourism, long term effects, and Plattsburgh. For more than 25 years, a commemoration of a pivotal battle during the War of 1812 has taken place in Plattsburgh. The event normally includes a reenactment, but this year's was reportedly canceled because Canadians refused to take part. According to local statements, the Canadian
Okay, Canadians refuse to take part. Now, as Canadians, we don't hear the same stuff that Americans hear. We know it's not necessarily first about tariffs. We know it's about the rhetoric, the insults, 51st state, Governor Trudeau, and so on. Um, I heard, what was it? Somebody was saying our feelings have been hurt. Oh my God, this is so much more than hurt feelings. What are you talking about? That comes from somebody who's unable to put themselves in somebody else's skin. So we're talking about Plattsburgh. What I find with Plattsburgh, I grew up in Montreal. Plattsburgh is a short hop and a skip. We used to go there all the time in the summer. We had old cars that would break down. I had an old MGB that I'd try to keep in shape with my dad, and so we'd leave with a tool chest. I mean, a toolbox in the car with all the tools we thought we needed for when it's going to break down. Because not if, but when it's going to break down. I had a stick to go see how much gas I had in the tank. There was no heating, but dress warm, whatever. Top came down in March anyway. All right. So Plattsburgh, fantastic place. If you've seen some of my other videos, you've also seen some of the people in positions of power / authority in New England coming out and talking about, we put together a poster, so that should be fine. Canadians will come back. We're taking your money at par. That should be fine. We're gonna, we're good. Or just these little stickers in the window that says "Welcome, bienvenue." Sure, it's a gesture, but that you could have done that 10 years ago anyway, but you're doing it now. And essentially what Canadians want to have happen is that the blue states put pressure on the federal government to stop being such dicks, in my opinion, allegedly. Okay, Plattsburgh. Oof, what a digress. Wow. Here we go.
Canadians wanted to make a point for their country about the tariffs,
Let's back up a bit.
a decision that locals seemed according to local statements, the Canadians wanted to make a point for their country about the tariffs, a decision that locals seem to understand, with one even saying he respects it. What happened there is far, far from the only instance of Canadians pulling out of U.S. events for various reasons. Sometimes it's tariffs. Sometimes it's Trump's rhetoric about the 51st state. Sometimes it's just
Belle gets it. Thank you, Belle. Thank you for saying something. It's too bad we started with tariffs, but let's back up a little bit and listen to what she has to say here. I love her.
rhetoric about the 51st state.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's just, well, all of this.
Mhm.
New stats suggest that in August, Canadian resident return trips from the U.S. by car dropped by 33.9% year over year. That's huge. A third of Canadian tourism by car gone. In raw numbers, that's about 1 million less trips in a single month. Even if those lost trips consisted of just a meal and filling up the tank, you're talking about around $100 million lost. I think we all know that generally you don't drive to another country for a meal and gas. This is the eighth consecutive.
I have friends who do that. I have friends. I have Uh, he's passed away recently, actually. I had a friend who lived close to the border, and he would go get smokes and put gas in his car. And at the border, they all knew him. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. How you doing? Hey, buddy. And he'd in and out, and go for breakfast at the closest Denny's, which is 5 minutes away. Back to Belle. Let's back it up a little tad.
We all know that generally you don't drive to another country for a meal and gas. This is the eighth consecutive month of year over year declines. The amount of tourism dollars lost is absolutely staggering. But wait, there's more. Canadian resident trips returning home by air also dropped year over year in August by a little more than 25%.
You know what I find screams tourism problem is when the airlines start cutting flights, because they're constantly working on efficiency and getting because it's flying or having airplanes is very expensive and you can't go very, very wrong. There's not tons of leeway. So they're constantly looking at routes and optimizing stuff. When they started cutting trips from any Canadian city to Los Angeles, that was a huge flag. That was a huge flag. And now we see what's happening in Los Angeles. Also, I'm not saying it's only Canadians. I think, yeah, and also the rest of the world's not necessarily going to the US, but I think also Americans are holding back a little bit because the economy is not necessarily as strong as what Americans were hoping it would be. You know, how are the egg prices? Was that it? Is that what you wanted? I guess great, good for you. Cheap eggs. Let's back it up a tad.
Canadian resident trips returning home by air also dropped year over year in August by a little more than 25%. If you've been watching for a while, you might remember the projections I went over a few months ago that suggested a Canadian travel boycott could cost the US 2.1 billion in lost spending and 14,000 jobs.
2.1 billion is if there was a 10% decrease, if I'm not mistaken. So just think of a 30%. And the real numbers aren't going to come out for like a while. We're going to hear lots of anecdotal stuff, which we have already started hearing about, border towns shuttering businesses and so on, which is absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not cheering for this in any way. Back it up.
That suggested a Canadian travel boycott could cost the US 2.1 billion in lost spending and 14,000 jobs. Remember, those jobs being lost also reduce US spending. Here's the thing about that. Those numbers are based on just a 10% reduction in Canadian travel, not 25% or 33%
I'm sorry. I didn't know she was going to go here. I apologize for busting for breaking her punch.
reduction in Canadian travel, not 25% or 33%. It's based on 2 million less visits to the US by Canadians. We lost that many visits just in July and August. The damage from picking a fight with our neighbor looks like it will cost billions of dollars and tens of thousands of jobs. Americans are consistently operating under the assumption that once the trade war calms down, they'll come back.
No, no, no. This is going to take generations. Why? Because we thought America's word was America's word. It's always been, gold standard almost. And now we realize that, whoops, things can change like that, which affect us incredibly. I mean, the heartache that's being brought economically to Canada now because of the tariffs, which were put in place because of all the fentanyl coming from Canada. That's insane. Who believes that? You're delusional if you believe that. Okay, let's back it up again. Blood pressure.
Thousands of jobs. Americans are consistently operating under the assumption that once the trade war calms down, they'll come back. People like to have traditions. Canadians would come back year after year to the same places. Here's the thing, it's 8 straight months of decline. Missing a tradition once is an unfortunate circumstance. Missing it twice is a pattern because they'll have established a new tradition somewhere else.
When we used to go to Husaco, an old orchard in Maine, we would always book. My grandmother would book a couple of years ahead of time. It was always like that. I'm wondering how many people rebooked this summer for next year if they went. And I wonder if the ones who didn't go, if they've booked for next year as well. I mean, when things started happening that were a little bit uncool, that I consider uncool in the States, we started going to Wasaga Beach in Ontario. Wow, what a discovery. Sandbanks, what a discovery. We got beautiful places in Canada. Beautiful places in Canada.
because they'll have established a new tradition somewhere else. Every month beyond 12 months of decline is permanent, irreparable harm to U.S. tourism and the economy. Undoubtedly, there are already some Canadians that will never come back. But the percentage of them who will never come back will likely skyrocket once this nonsense spills into its second year. This damage will be long lasting. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
Bye, Belle. Okay, Belle is amazing. Again, go see her channel, like, subscribe, share. She's fantastic. If you enjoyed this, please give it a little like. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It helps a lot. We are only 498,000 views away from 500,000. No, I'm kidding. This is fantastic. And I'm getting great comments to you. Everybody's so encouraging and so nice. That's it. Have a good day. Go play outside.